Welcome everyone to Creativity-Hive's weekly program. I'm Miriam Haugen. I'm part of the Creativity-Hive team. We help creatives learn to make impactful storytelling videos through one-on-one teaching, live group coaching, and live boot camps. Our weekly Hangout brings you people working in all forms of motion media and related industries, honestly, from across the globe. So be sure and leave a comment, ask questions, tell us where you're joining from. Today, I'm going to bring Will on here. We are talking with Will Henley.
Hello,
Hi,
hello.
Will.
Good
Will Henley
morning.
Digital. And I've told everyone that you are a sales and marketing guru that specializes in our industry. And I love your LinkedIn description. So if it's okay, I'm gonna just read it because I think you've really targeted exactly who you're after. Helping mission-driven video production companies build repeat, high-value, direct-to-brand relationships, 1 to 3 high-paying projects every month. Isn't that what we would all like to have? If so many of us go to sleep thinking if we could just have 1 to 3 high-paying repeat clients every month, wouldn't that be perfect?
All right, I'm glad it resonates. And yeah, it's really, really nice to be here. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, tell us, so tell us a little bit about yourself and in your own words and what you specialize in.
So I am based in Germany, from the UK originally, and I've been working exclusively with video and photography companies that work business to business, basically. So I've got a real passion for, I like the strategy of business to business marketing, and with my own kind of background in the creative fields and photo and video, I just found a really nice alignment there, basically. But yeah, I just like working on the strategy side of it. A lot of the companies that I work with is typically very, very dependent on referrals and always have been. So even very established companies. So I really like working with people, broadening their knowledge, drawing on the knowledge that they have. And yeah, working on the analytical side of it with people who are often not very, they'll self-describe themselves as, they're creative people, they're not business people. So getting them to think in those ways is a really interesting exercise and an interesting endeavor, if that makes sense.
Yes. and making those do you recommend to people that they reach out to and make initial contacts with companies that they'd like to work for, or do you help people to identify who they really want to work for?
So the first step is often really getting people to identify, actually. So the way that most business to business video content creators or photography content creators have got into the industry, they've normally come through referrals, which are absolutely amazing, but they mean that they've worked with people from all different industries and all different sectors. Often they're doing a combination of business to business and then business to consumer, sometimes even doing things like weddings or events with just individuals as well as stuff with companies. They're working with a range of companies, they're working with some agencies. So the first thing, because obviously when you want to market something, you can't talk to everybody at the same time. So the first part of the conversation is really actually trying to help people make some decisions about who they really enjoy working with the most and who they'd like to work more with moving forward, so that you can then start to put together a strategy for working with those people. But yeah, the first part of that conversation is almost always a sometimes extended period of consultation, just getting people to actually put their cards on the table and make some decisions about who they really enjoy creating work for, so that we can then put together a strategy to actually market to those people. So yeah, that really is the first stage of the process.
So pretty interesting. I mean, the strategy behind it, I guess, it's pretty interesting that it's actually a business model. So for a layman, in layman's terms, or for a layman, essentially, if I'm a videographer, right, and I had to come to you and I say, hey guys, I need help because I'm a good videographer, or I'm a good editor, or anything, photographer, but I'm not getting recurring business because even though my work is great and I think it's great, I think it's awesome, and I'm not getting any sort of business. I'm trying to understand what would the steps be in order for you guys to take that. What happens next?
So yeah, the first step in that process, as mentioned, would definitely be like, okay, well, yeah, who do you want to look at? So we need to market different market segments individually. I don't know if you've tried marketing yourselves in your own kind of capacities, but basically trying to talk to. I always like to put the image of people at a party. If you're at a party and you're trying to have a conversation with two people at the same time, it's going to fall flat, basically. So what you need to do is approach those people in order and give them your full attention. So the first thing to do is to really decide who that's going to be first and look at that. The second thing that we need to do is understand those people. So there's always, and this is not limited to photo and video companies, but there's always a characteristic lack of knowledge amongst people often earlier in their careers about the markets that they want to work with. So what I found is a real strong difference actually between the production companies and the freelancers that I work with. So the production companies will often have a much better knowledge of their clients.
Yeah.
A lot of people who are on their own or maybe closer to the start of their careers will often not know enough, basically. So if they don't know enough, then there's always going to be some research that needs doing. And even with very established people, sometimes there's research that needs doing as well. And just understanding the people that we work with and what they want. I'm a very firm believer of, particularly with video, of its capacity to solve business problems, which is why I like working with it so much. I use it throughout my company, throughout my ecosystem, throughout my sales processes, and it's made immeasurable differences, positive differences to my own work, and I've seen what it can do for other companies as well. So we have to have a sense, if we're going to talk about video and how it helps and how it moves people away from problems they're having and towards outcomes that they want, we have to know what those problems are and what the outcomes are that companies are looking for, so that we can start to have really persuasive and interesting conversations with those companies about the capacity for video to help. Because basically what you see, and when people first start promoting or trying to promote video, they often just say like, hey, I can help tell your company's story, or quite generic sounding phrases that don't actually really communicate quite how helpful creative assets are for that company. I'm there pulling my hair out because I know how useful it is, but we need to communicate just how useful it is and what problems it specifically solves. So that second phase is always going to be either what do you know about your market, and if it's not very much, okay, we need to find out so we can then start to talk to people in a language that's really relevant and useful to them and start connecting the dots for them about how you can actually help their company and move it forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. And do you guys go up to the step where you actually put your client together with their prospective client? Do you find those really? Do you actually go that far?
So it's start to finish. So it can be quite quick with that. So my background's really in sorry, I'm just not sure if I'm in focus or not, but hopefully I am.
You are.
Cool. My background was kind of in lead generation, and that's how I started out. So that's always a central part of the process, because theory without actually applying that theory is useful. I mean, most of us have been to university and we know what it's like to just study that theory and then go into the real world and apply it. But for me, that's a really central part. And obviously getting results for the people that I work with is how I market my service. I need to have that step in there. But yeah, that always follows what's our position here? What's our conversation here? Who are we talking to them? What are we talking to them about? Okay, this is how you go and have those conversations, and this is how you connect with those people.
Yeah.
And yeah, my role in that is not as an agent. It's very much in giving the people the tools to do that themselves. So looking at the right places to have conversations, and then guiding them through having those conversations and giving them a structure and a repeatable system.
So it's not putting your client in touch with a database of potential clients that you holding. It's giving him the tools, or them the tools, to essentially find out exactly the process needed to get it correct when they approach the clients, because most of the time, naturally, the message is pretty kind of muddied. If I make great videos and I can tell your story, and the client's like, okay, cool, but the corporate world thinks a little bit different. As they think a lot differently than just, well, we could use a video too. There's so much of stuff behind it, and I guess that's where videographers, and I think it's a great service you're offering, because videographers are creatively minded, especially editors and cinematographers, etc. So they all about, and I'm talking, this is from experience, it's me, I'd love to create this, and I got this great vision in my mind, and it's awesome, and it's going to sound great and look great, and the message is correct, but the corporate sitting on the other end of the table is actually not thinking about that at all. Corporate is thinking about ROI, bottom line. That's all they're interested in. So am I going to spend $5,000 on a video? Where's that return on that investment coming from? And I think, from what I'm understanding, you give me the tools to understand how to actually go out and communicate my value in terms of the ROI. If I said creative, but that's essentially it.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. Yeah, 100%. And I had another point to add to that, which I've now really conveniently forgotten. It was around, so a lot of the people that I talk to, and that I work with, they actually have all of that information already. It's quite interesting sometimes through the period of working with people. They're like, do you know what? I'm not actually having to reinvent the wheel here. Like, I know all this stuff, but it's actually just a matter of organizing it and, like you say, then communicating it in the right way, because they're not having to reinvent the wheel. They're not finding out anything new. They're just like, okay, that's how I get that point across to that person, and that's how I then use that to open the door to those companies and more companies like them. Right. So yeah, it's not always.
It reminds me pretty much of a little thing I saw where you need to understand how to actually speak in a boardroom. So a creative person would say that your website is horrible, as an example, but you need to not say that to a corporate, because they don't really like it. Yeah, so you got to say, I feel that your website could improve with a little bit more, just a little bit more work on it, and I'm sure I will be able to provide that sort of service for you. But being creative, the creative brain, because you worked with a lot of creatives, wants to just rush ahead creatively, and in their mind they know what the site's going to look like, they know what the videos are going to be on, and in that rush you lose the client. It's just a fact. And then if you don't lose the client, and one of the things I saw on your site was the fact that most of the creators undercut themselves by almost 80 to 90%. So the client will say, okay, cool, you can do this, but we don't have budget, which is just the usual kind of thing they say. And you, in the hope that you're going to get future work from them, accept the work, undervalue and undercut yourself, which brings me to the point where you are giving them the tools to actually not undercut themselves. You said, upped their prices by 2 to 10 times and are charging now between X and Y, whereas they were doing it at probably 1/8 the price before. I love what I'm hearing. I mean, how do you sign up? Miriam, I'd love to get on this. It's just right up my alley to understand how, even just out of curiosity, what is your kind of fee structure, or your structure like?
So in terms of the way that I work, there's a really big spread, because I do work with people who are just sort of starting out, and I do work with companies with 2, 3, 4, 5 decision makers as well, who have more complicated existing structures and also just more complicated needs, and they want me to be in the weeds with them. So there's a really, really big range, and that's actually a really difficult question to answer. But I think that this communicating that value and the pricing stuff, it all comes back to that being able to communicate, like you said, in terms that are real to the client, whether that is financially, whether that is another less tangible kind of outcome, but just it comes down straight up to being able to communicate clearly with them as well, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
I understand that really quite well over the years in attending NAB Live and Max Live and uh, going through some extensive email chains with quite a number of the engineers for Premiere Pro. And some fascinating conversations with several of the program heads and all, and also having been through their marketing and experience, the M&E people doing surveys and testing and figuring out what they should do, what they should recommend to the teams. I really have a much better feel for how Adobe exists as a corporate structure than I think most of the people that say post on the Premiere Pro forum. And holy cow, that is a corporate corporation, a totally corporate corporation. And yeah, your comment about you have to communicate in the way that they understand. Well, then as a user, the obverse situation is uh, a lot of the actual users, like there's several million people using Premiere Pro. A lot of them are in a quasi corporate or corporate situation. A lot of us are not, and you think the developers would have an individual discussion with you. Well, the development team is used to working when they actually work with groups. They're used to working with a company that may have 20, 100, 300 people with licenses for Premiere Pro at a time if they're going to be working directly with a company through their enterprise situation. And that's one thing. The individual user is, we have them, but we don't know that much about them frequently is kind of the thing, because that's not the largest part of their interest. And so if you're going to communicate with those staffers, you kind of have to stand there and listen to them talk to each other and get an idea of their corporate speak. Because if you do get some ability to do corporate speak with them, all of a sudden they engage with you better. And it's kind of weird. Know how to deal with a corporate when you're dealing with a corporate.
So, what are some of the most common pitfalls that videographers have when they're trying to self promote? I'm sure you've run into all of them.
So great question. So there's a couple. The first one is, I think, and the major one is that basically they think that it has to be all about content. So they're selling content and they're selling it ideally to brands who have got huge budgets to invest in endless content, and that's absolutely fantastic. But not all companies need that, and specifically smaller companies, which most of them are, they don't necessarily have or need to invest as much as they do in putting out as much content as they do. So I'm a firm believer in having direct approaches, so having conversations with people and then using content to support that and build authority and educate people, which is a massive issue in selling photo and video for the most part. A lot of production companies feel like that everybody should understand how important video is and they don't need to actually educate them around how important it is. But content is an amazing place to really educate potential clients about actually, what goes into it and what they get out of it and all of the things that we've talked about as well. So content's great for mid to long term lead generation when done right, education when done right, authority building when done right. But you need to then also have short term, how can I have conversations with these people tomorrow, the next day, so that I can get some projects and get some money in the bank and then sustain myself to keep doing content in the mid to long term. So a lot of people burn out doing content all the time, or they think it doesn't work because they're either not doing it right or they're not using direct approaches as well. So yeah, thinking it all comes down to posting and those posts are going to get them what they want tomorrow is probably one of the main pitfalls that people fall into, because they just can't sustain it long enough, as long as they need to see the results that they want. So yeah, incorporating direct approaches is a really good way to get quick wins, and then you scoop up the rest of the content, is my approach to that. And another one, so the kind of repeat client thing has come up a few times. The one thing is just not marketing to people they already work with, because it's so much easier than marketing to a cold lead. And everyone's like, oh no, my clients don't come back. Okay, well, what do you do to market to these people? silence, like absolute silence. And that's one of the really frustrating things. So the first thing I often look at is like, okay, look, can we just audit the people you work with already, see what they're not using at the moment, and we can then try and offer them some of those things, because they know you, they trust you, they love your work.
They just need to have another reason to hire you again this month.
Yeah, exactly. But they don't know, and they're not going to necessarily be like, oh, okay, we need a video for this. But you can look at what they're doing and say, hey, look, have you thought about a video for this? Great idea. Yeah, let's give it a go. Like, it's about keeping that momentum. With the relationship, I always try and encourage people when they're on a shoot to start, come with an idea that they can maybe offer, to not pitch or hard pitch, but start talking about the next shoot and just try and keep that momentum going and try and fill in the gaps with existing clients, because pouring new leads into it the whole time is a very time, money, energy intensive way of doing things. So yeah, not marketing to existing clients is probably one of the main pitfalls, I would say. Yeah, sorry, you want to say something, Neil?
Miriam and I, of course, came out of stills, and years ago we ran into by accident a man named Tor Melhus from Trondheim, Norway, who, for a photographer, for an image creator, was an incredible businessman. And he had a large, very profitable portrait studio, which was as hard a thing to do in Norway as it was here, and if not harder. And he was just really always preaching that your current clients are where your marketing needs to be the best and the most diverse. It's always you should know each person you work with, what's their family like, what are their business situations are. And so you analyze and you work them for, okay, if this is a person you've done a headshot for, well, when was the last time he had a family portrait done? Does he have they have confirmation rather than high school graduation? Does he have a kid coming up on confirmation? Do you know if you it was just all this stuff, so that he was constantly working on those connections and suggesting to the client, anytime you did work for someone, you needed to be able to suggest 2 or 3 things that you could do as a next step for them. That then he said, don't try and go for a huge expensive thing all at once. Keep doing constant work for them, and over time that builds into a business that's really good. And which is exactly the kind of thing you're saying. Is that
exactly. Yeah, be thinking about what's the next thing you can offer to them. That's brilliant.
That they're going to need anyway. They know they're going to need, and you're the one offering to it, so they don't call someone else. Well, we can schedule that right now.
Yeah, just making it seamless and always having that momentum, like I mentioned. And I think the way you said it as well, like making sure we're not selling rubbish to people, like making sure that it's stuff that they really need. And this is where it comes back kind of full circle to auditing and to research and understanding like what can actually really help them as well as part of this process, and making sure it's really, really useful stuff. But as long as it's useful and you can communicate that value in a clear way, then the pitch with a person you know is relatively easy, because they trust you to deliver already.
One of the things that I work with mixinglight.com, which is a pro colorist teaching subscription site, and one of the things that I've heard from several of the members there when they're posting is it can be difficult at times. That do we need a reel, or how do we approach people for doing things? And one of the main comments is, yeah, you need to be approaching people, but it needs to be a quick and an easy thing. And and maybe the days of the 3-minute reel for a VFX or a colorist are perhaps gone. That that they're not going to watch the whole thing, and they'll look at the file size and go, "Oh no, I'm not even going to start." So, suggested that you might want to have something that's just a few quick shots, based. And I was sitting there going, right, we're in the TikTok era. So even when you're marketing to a business to hire you as a content creator, being able to do the short little snippet that showcases what you say. So we can do this and do that, and then you just couple quick examples, or do this, do that, and I'd love to get a call from you and talk with you further. And that's about as much as you want to do at any one time, because they don't want to take the time to watch anything other than that, or read, the length of email that I would typically try and write.
Right. Keep it short and sweet. And yeah, reach out to them, but make it very pointed. So do you have like top 3 suggestions of what you would give to pieces of advice that you give to videographers going after this business to business market?
Yes, indeed. So in terms of, and I think I might end up repeating myself a little bit here.
That's okay.
But yeah, basically I'd say decide who you really want to work with and accept that it's not forever. But you need to speak to one group at a time, because trying to talk to everyone is going to get you nowhere fast. That's basically the first tip, is make that decision, make some tough calls that you haven't had to make because, like I said, of the referral process that people come through. But when you do outbound marketing of any kind, you're going to see more results quicker by speaking to a small group of people. So who is that group? Who do you want to work with? That would be my top tip, basically. As mentioned, audit your existing clients. So if you've got clients you work with already who are the same kind that you'd want to work with moving forward and you enjoy working with them, have a look at what they're doing at the moment with you, what's working, what's not working, other applications for video and photo and whatever else you might offer alongside it. But really look at them and then, start incorporating that conversation into your face-to-face time with clients. So presuming that you are working with the decision maker or one of the decision makers, or somebody that at least has the power to go to them, then bring that up in conversation. Have you thought about this? And work on, instead of a newsletter, like this is what I've been doing, educational value-based content that goes out to existing clients about way that they could use content that they're not at the moment. So make sure if you've got a list of people, which you will, make that the focus of your email list. This is what so-and-so is doing with this kind of video. This is the result they're seeing, case studies, educational content, but really work that existing client list would be the other top tip before even thinking about lead gen and cold leads and outreach and all of this different stuff. The final one is to really work on a strong, unique selling point. We haven't really talked about that, but a USP, what makes you different from other companies out there? Again, this becomes a really important question when we're doing outbound marketing, and it's one that people typically can't answer at all when I first pose the question to them. So you can figure out what makes you different, but I would advocate the simplest approach again is to niche very hard and know more about a small market than every other production company out there and make that your unique selling point. It's the simplest hack to having a USP in a sea of people that don't have a USP. So who is it? Is it going to be corporates? Is it going to be certain kind of product-based brands? Or, what's your market? Know more about them than anybody else and people will come to you. It's a really simple hack for creating a strong USP, but you're going to need something that makes you different from the next company if you want to systematically and efficiently generate leads and sell efficiently in that process as well.
What as an example would be something that as in just a total example would be a differentiator for let's call it a videographer. Let's call it a post-production, maybe a editor or content creator.
So people now, when I speak to people, or when I first speak to people before we do the work, they typically talk about their style, or they talk about how long it takes them, or they talk about what their work looks like. So I feel like for post-production, someone working in post-production, what their work looks like would probably be a better differentiator than for a B2B video company, because they're working with other creatives who already understand the value of composition and light and color, and they don't have to do so much persuading. Right. The main differentiator, like I kind of mentioned, is tying, basically being somebody who can tie the video or photo or whatever it is to actual problems these people are having. That's the main and best differentiator that I've seen, because most people can't do that, and they're not willing to take the steps or put the processes in place to be able to actually do that.
So from what I'm understanding as well is you give people the ability to do something that most people don't even know exists. And I've just kind of been reading between the lines here. You give them the ability to focus on what their client problem areas might be and how to rectify those problem areas with content creation, and how to actually kind of get into a conversation and communicate that in a very diplomatic manner. I don't know how else to say it. I guess that's as succinct as I can, which is quite very, very interesting, because you go out there and you say, hey, okay, corporate A, yeah, I can do videos for you and blah, blah, blah. And that doesn't necessarily kind of do anything for future business with them. They might like you, and maybe they got a huge budget for you for the foreseeable future, and that's one in a million, the shot where they're going to use you again and again. But if you're giving people the ability to go in and research the client and look at where they could actually benefit in areas they haven't even begun to look at benefiting from, using your skills as a videographer or whatever it is, or your skill is, I think that's a very, very clever idea. Super clever. I absolutely dig it.
Yeah.
Very, very clever. Yeah.
And
I didn't think that it's very educational. This week. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the way that you're a good example, Will. I mean, that description that you put in LinkedIn, you tell specifically, this is how I can help you. And you've niched down to a very specific market. I think it's brilliant. So awesome. Any parting shots, guys?
Well,
Final questions?
what are the, how do you begin with, if somebody's out there and has stumbled upon you or heard about you and wants to begin with you, what is the process? How does it begin?
Okay, great question, and thank you for asking that one. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So there is the best first port of call would honestly be on LinkedIn, to reach out there, and then just to have a short conversation, basically. So maybe Miriam will do me the honor of putting the link to my LinkedIn, and also there's a call booking link as well, my calendar link. I can put that underneath the video hopefully as well. I'll send that over later. But it's just to have a short conversation really and see if it's a fit for the kind of stuff I do. Not everybody's in the right stage time-wise, business-wise, or in terms of the actual goals that they have. It's just not aligned in that respect. So the first step is really just having a quick 10-minute chat to see if there is alignment there, and then we can book a longer chat and look at things in more detail. So yeah, I'll send you the link, the other one as well.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sounds
if
good.
you could chat that under the video for me, that would be really fantastic.
Okay.
And generally, well, what is I know it's a very difficult question to answer, because it kind of changes from person to person or company to company. But in your experience thus far, what was the shortest time you spent with someone or a company, and what is the longest it could possibly go to?
So again, good question. So I typically try and keep engagements between sort of 8 and 12 weeks.
Okay.
That's the spread to get the system set up. For some people, it does take longer. There's a couple of reasons. One is they get work coming in and they have to do that work. The other reason is they don't follow the process and don't make the decisions they need to make as quickly as they could do. And then sometimes we do drag on. But typically it's quite a short engagement. We normally get through the consultation or the kind of positioning, strategizing element within the first 3 to 5 weeks. And then it's on to let's have conversations, and then let's put sales processes in place, and let's actually start flexing this muscle and give you a marketing system to work with. So yeah, that's the ideal scenario, and sometimes it does go a little bit longer when those other factors come into play.
And during those 8 to 12 weeks, is it a daily thing, or is it scheduled? What is it like for somebody to work with you?
So again, it's slightly different depending on who I'm working with. There's some people who I work with on more of a group basis if they benefit from that way of working as part of a cohort. Other times I work one-on-one with people, so it does vary, but generally we meet minimum of once a week. And then there's self-directed time of, so we strategize together for normally one session a week, and then there's self-directed time working on things, getting feedback on those things, implementing things as well. Obviously moving more just towards implementation and phasing me out of that equation. But with marketing, it is something that needs to be done for a short time, at least on a daily basis. Consistency needs to be there, which is why the goal with a lot of people really is to get them systematized with this stuff so they can actually start hiring it out at some point, because trying to do your own marketing each and every day for the rest of your life is not very attractive.
Not easy, not nice. Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, within that time frame anyway, the goal is to get it into a daily practice, but phasing me out of that equation as quickly as possible and just getting them onto implementation, really.
Miriam, where have you been hiding, Will?
Right.
I mean, where has this guy been hiding? You know, a lot of people needs his services, from what I feel.
Oh,
a
yeah.
whole lot of people, really. So my question, my final question, Will, because Miriam knows I can kind of talk for you, is how do you market yourself?
Exactly the way I teach my clients to market. So that's basically the way that I've learned. I work B2B, so it's where my skill set has come from. The stuff that I learned was also in B2B marketing from other mentors and other agencies. So I use exactly the same techniques basically, and I've built most, because I haven't come through referrals, I've started out from a different path. I've used these techniques to pretty much exclusively build my company. So yeah, exactly the same way, same strategies. It's just repeating is not the right word because it's not exactly the same, but adapting that format for production companies.
Very fascinating. Well, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Really.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm going to be putting out some little tips from this, and I will make sure that in the comments on the LinkedIn post that we have your link. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
Just one last thing. You work across the globe, right? So it's international.
International, English-speaking countries, just because there is a copywriting element in everything that we do. It's about language, and I'm not necessarily in a position to help in second languages. So generally English-speaking countries, but anywhere across the world, yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, thanks so much for having me on, everyone. Really enjoyed it.
Yes, fantastic.
Thanks. And stick around after we're done, and we'll have a little chat afterwards, Will.
Cool. All right, perfect.